just kind of show you the info. I had this loop playing of a virtual hike. Sometimes it's kind of thing, right? We can't get outdoors maybe because of the smoke or COVID, and so we could take advantage of virtual versions. It's not nearly as good as the real thing, obviously. I think kind of, the massive transformations of our world. If you look at the news from Disney last week or so, 28,000 workers laid off in the U.S. theme park division. So massive effects on all sorts of industries. I was reading an article yesterday saying that 53% of U.S. restaurants are closed permanently, which I thought was crazy. And I was just kind of curious. I was going on looking at the list of restaurants in Reno, and quite a few places that are, permanently closed. So the kind of change we're experiencing in education, in some industries, certainly we've talked about this before, it's probably actually a lot worse. We can at least keep the doors open virtually at LTCC, but obviously in other cases it's not possible. So it's kind of putting things in perspective. So I sent around 2 articles included. One was talking about supporting student parents, and maybe some of these techniques are similar for faculty, staff, others on campus who have children and are trying to manage things. Of course, with students, we get into the whole food insecurity and housing insecurity, and so you get into other issues. I was just reading a thing today also on Inside Higher Ed saying that the U.S. leads the world in terms of, they called it ancillary, in terms of ancillary money spent in colleges and universities. And by that, they mean dorms, they mean food services, all the kind of, quote, extras. But of course, a lot of us feel like if you don't have that stuff, if you don't have student clubs, if you don't have dorms in some areas, and right now, of course, a lot of colleges and universities are dealing with the challenges of COVID, you would say that's part of that whole student experience. For us locally, of course, we could talk about how our students face a lot of barriers in terms of equity, and it's become perhaps harder and harder to help those students out, particularly during COVID, because you pile on top of already those issues of food and housing insecurity, say these other issues. So they talked about emergency aid for students, task force that takes into account plans for reopening that really does consider what students think about the plan for reopening, because of course we have to almost coordinate what's happening in the K-12 and the unified LTUSD with parenting needs at home, and if you don't have childcare, what do you do, kind of thing. And we faced a lot of these issues with the Child Development Center, of course. So that article I thought was interesting. The other one was more just I think she's an infectious disease expert, a research director at a science nonprofit. It looks like maybe climate work. And I just thought this, picture was telling, because it's like, on the one hand, she's on CNN giving an interview, presumably on Zoom, and then you look at the rest of her, apartment or house or whatever, and it's like there's toys and stuff everywhere, and it just kind of shows you that double world, of being a parent and dealing with stuff on the home front. And then also in the home front, of course, dealing with work and giving interviews and so forth. And as I've said, a lot of students, I've heard this recently, maybe don't participate in their classes with their video on, maybe because there's distraction going on. There are settings, of course, you could do in Zoom. And one of these days I'll have to do a new video because there's actually a new set of filters and other kind of settings, kind of goofy ones, but you can do a lot to adapt, your video and make it look a little more professional. But I think it's a lot to ask people, and I know it's a lot to ask employees at the college too, who are dealing with parenting, dealing with illness, if any of their family members have any kind of illness going on and so forth. So I think a lot to consider, and I thought if we wanted to, we could make a short list of some tips or what's working for you or not working for you in terms of trying to maintain a balance with work and life, given the fact that those two are kind of one now. In the old days, we would drive to the office and we would, have everything taken care of in terms of childcare or whatever issues we had with our homes. Nowadays, we're sort of compressing everything into one space where we're having to deal with everything all at the same time, and it certainly makes for super challenging situations for so many people. So I'll stop talking and just see what are you dealing with on your ends in terms of trying to maintain some kind of balance, strategies for parenting, strategies for maintaining sanity. Solange?
Well, mine isn't really parenting, mine is traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And because my class is asynchronous, it
Yeah.
allows me to travel.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have to do is I have to pick up the pieces as I go. I can't spend dedicated time grading and reading and
Mm-hmm.
replying. I have to catch a little bit here and catch a little bit there.
Right.
I cannot just dedicate a solid block of time to do my reading, replying, and grading. I have to do it bit by bit, piece
Mm-hmm.
by piece,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be a little disruptive because there's no flow. And but so far I've been able to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, things are tough and they're different and they're constantly changing. Um, I thought I had my office door latched and my dog just came in and just came in for a visit. I
Yeah.
was just like, "Hi, I'm here." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Um, and I think Solange, you're right. It's finding those few minutes of time here and there to fit things in and
Mm-hmm.
make sure you get it all done. And it's very different. It's very different from going into the office from 9 to 5 or going into the classroom for 3 hours a day and then
Mm-hmm.
going home and having your time to grade or to do paperwork, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're lucky our daycare is reopened and they're wonderful and our daughter's been able to get back in full time.
Okay.
But there's two of us sharing a small office,
Right.
working from home right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so when somebody has an important call, the other one's in the other room,
Mm-hmm.
or we both have headsets on, and I'm dealing with student confidentiality. And
Yeah.
so when I have a student meeting, it's headphones in, microphone, door shut,
Mm-hmm.
doing my best to respect their privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's, I mean, currently I have a basket next to me. I can't see
Mm-hmm.
it at the moment, but this is all sorts of pipe cleaners and random child distractions.
Mm-hmm.
I have a box of 96 crayons that has been spilled under my desk for 2 days. Um, and that's with a daughter who's in daycare full time
Yeah.
because the students' needs are different. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm serving them different and I'm answering emails late at night or
Mm-hmm.
taking Cranium Cafe or Zoom meetings at times where I normally would have, pushed the student a little bit to work around normal office hours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little more generous when I give my time,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I understand that everybody's struggling a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So I might take a meeting at 7 a.m. or at 9 p.m. after I put my daughter to bed or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I really would have tried not to in the past. It's not that I would never do that, but it was much less
Mm-hmm.
frequent.
Right.
Um, I really related to the article about the mom sitting there in her shorts and her
Yeah.
blazer.
Right.
Um, it's reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Totally.
it's life as we know it, and I mean it's little dollar store trinkets that my daughter
Mm-hmm.
can play with while I'm doing stuff. Because life is just different.
Yeah. And sometimes I know some parents have used like the virtual background, but sometimes still, your kid can pop into the screen and you hear the sounds in the background if you're talking. So there isn't like a super easy way to do that except to isolate yourself. But as you said, if multiple people are working in the same home workspace, it's like that doesn't make it easy. If you're both doing Zoom at the same time, that's going to be total chaos. Different Zoom
Right.
meetings. So, yeah.
Right. There's, and a lot of our local families and our students are living with, there may be 10 people in a two-bedroom apartment
Right.
because the economy is getting tougher and tougher. And so, um, I really think that we need to respect their privacy and their space, and understand that, even those of us with space and resources are struggling. I can't even imagine these families with young children at home, with school age children at home,
Right.
and not knowing what the school plan's going to be, from week to week. I mean, as soon as we start seeing things start to shift back, if we do during flu season, it's going to be a whole nother
Yeah.
upheaval.
Hmm.
We're looking at a huge upheaval in our community next week because the schools are going back hybrid, the elementary schools. But
Hmm.
Boys and Girls Club isn't going to be open on Wednesdays because they can't handle
Yeah.
both cohorts at one time in their facility.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, hundreds of families that use Boys and Girls Club are going to be without care on Wednesdays.
Hmm.
And the Boys and Girls Club is doing the best they can to provide this distance education and this after school support and balance these cohorts.
Hmm.
And it's no blame on them. It just, the logistics are a nightmare.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's super hard. I mean, we depend on all those community services, and then when something like this happens, it just throws everything up in the air. And so it's just, what do you do? And I think those decisions have to make it into what we decide, because if so many employees and students are dealing with childcare issues, or the pedagogy, I worry about it because this morning someone texted me and said, oh, students always have video off, but I think one of the reasons for that is because of those distractions and the fact that there's just so much going on. They're worried that it wouldn't look professional, and that's one
Mhm.
advantage, as Solange was talking about, with the asynchronous, the non-Zoom based discussions, because you don't have any issues there with having to look presentable. You can do it in your pajamas, and you don't have to worry about like that kind of professionalism. I think that's kind of an expectation. And it's happened to me in meetings that we were doing this one race workshop, and we did breakout groups, but it was like so weird because a bunch of the people in the breakouts had their the video off, and I sort of felt kind of put on the spot. I'm like, well, a few of us are talking, but then other people aren't even participating. One guy had his video on, but he never said a word. So Zoom is kind of strange in that sense, right? Where it has an ability to create immediacy, but at the same time, I feel like because we're living in this merged realm of home and work in the same space. We're not allowing ourselves really to have professional environments or distraction-free environments, and that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges. I was mentioning earlier, they're launching some new filters with Zoom, and also these crazy kind of like those apps on your phone where you can give yourself a mustache and stuff. They're really silly, and
Mhm.
it's, maybe they're gearing that more towards like younger people or something. But I'd like to see something developed where they could do a better job of reducing. There are some settings with background noise, and Solange, like you have the northern lights there and stuff with the video backdrop, but it doesn't always do the job, right? If you're living in a place with a lot of distractions and people talking in the background, you can't really have a good conversation during a Zoom session. So I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges of going to Zoom for us, all those
Mhm.
distractions.
Yeah, and I think some of it's technology. If
Mhm.
you have several people in a house or apartment, there's times where we're both on Zoom and there's not enough bandwidth and my video keeps cutting out.
Yeah,
And
right.
there's, what do I do about that? Nothing. Like I keep turning it back on, or if it seems to be distracting or it seems to be an issue, I just leave it off.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's hard to tell whether it's a privacy issue, a technology issue. Why is that video off? What is
Right,
going on? Uh,
right.
I think my word of the year of 2020 is grace.
Yeah.
We just have to give not only each other but ourselves a whole lot of grace for everything we're going through.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when you're working at home and there's a pile of dishes or there's laundry to be done, it's hard to stay focused.
Totally.
Hard
Yeah.
to buckle down and work. Whereas when you go to the office, you just kind of leave it behind, and it's like, okay, I'll get to that when I'm done with my day.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now it's like, oh, at lunch, okay, well, I can throw a load of laundry in, or I better load the
Yeah.
dishwasher, or oh, I need to straighten up the baby's room, or whatever. The dogs need a walk because they're bugging me. There's
Mm-hmm.
just those things that are on your mind a little bit
Yeah.
more. Not to mention the stress of this, deadly virus and the political scene with it being an election year,
Yeah.
and our communities full of housing and food insecurity, and
Mm-hmm.
all of the things that bring up all of that anxiety and worry and concern,
Mm-hmm.
that we're just not used to dealing with all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, it reminds me of I was reading an article. I'm forgetting. There's a Greek term. It's for an emotion, like begins with an A. I'm not remembering it, but the emotion is a word for like a feeling of dread and just apathy, like not wanting to do anything at all. And so I think for a lot of us, right, like there's been this multiple things hitting us, the political scene, all the stuff with Black Lives Matter, with, people getting killed on video, seeing that on our TVs, it's certainly impacted our students. COVID, of course, and all that at once is just a lot, to deal with. My wife and I yesterday were going to get vaccines, and I feel kind of loopy from because I got like three of them yesterday, and they're saying, to get flu and to get for whooping cough and pneumonia, and end up getting my second round of shingles and so forth. And just going to a doctor's office or a grocery store, that takes longer. Like you have to think about it more. You have to think about your mask, social distancing, bringing sanitizer. It's just everything seems to take longer, and that adds certainly to the stress of all this that we're dealing with. And so your idea about grace, is important because I think it's going to be really hard. Hopefully we extend, the extra mile. If a student has an issue, we reach out to those students and that student and say, hey, what's going on? And, if I can give you an extension or something because you're having issues with whatever that's going on in your life, let's talk and try to make some accommodation or something. So I think that's a really good reminder for us, for sure, right
I
now.
think it comes back to what Solange was talking about a few weeks ago too, with students not showing up for class, and how do I address that, and how do I follow up, and
Mm-hmm.
what is my responsibility, because I want to help and I
Yeah.
want these students involved and I care about their success, um, while as educators and leaders in our communities maintaining our own sanity
Yeah.
and being
Yeah.
able to have some self-care and understand that we can't help everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, and I think that's hard. I think as people that care about our students and care about our community, um, it's really hard to figure out where to draw that line.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I remember we did a workshop. It might be the one pictured here on the screen prior to the year before, prior to COVID, and we were talking about empathy then. And, the conversation then was certainly different than it is now. I mean, nowadays, if we have students working in the restaurant industry or industries that have, closed up because of COVID or have shifted operations, we have to just think about how the students have been impacted economically and psychologically as we've been impacted. And hopefully, as you said, we can make some accommodations, but also to maybe set some boundaries because, certainly you can get into a situation like with any student. I've had students in the past who have struggled psychologically, they've struggled with addictions, and I've always reached out to our counseling staff because I'm not trained in counseling or psychology. And so for me, it's always been important to reach out if there's a student who has issues, and to try to get them the help that they need. I was involved in some conversations about getting. There's a woman who will be doing mental health counseling, and we were talking about the whole HIPAA thing and how privacy works with Zoom, and we're trying to figure that out. And I think that's super important right now. Self care and also just mental health,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that means for you. A lot of for people who see therapists, a lot of those services have shut down. Some of that is moving virtually now, and that's becoming more common. But self care and just thinking about your mental health and your sanity is super important. I was reading some articles saying that just sitting so much and staying in your house so much, is having an effect on you physiologically, physically, psychologically. And so going outside is way more, a better strategy than watching a virtual video loop of the forest or something, right? It's because self-care and mental health for all of us, including our students, is just so vital in these times.
My question to both of you is regarding office hours. This is the first quarter I've ever taught asynchronously.
Yeah.
And my office hours are Thursdays at 11, and I got a feeling that some of my students are not able to attend my office hours because of their class load. And Amber, you mentioned that you seem to have random times to be able to Zoom in with your students. Is that an option for me to do that? To be able to randomly have Zoom time with my students, or am I only allowed my office hour?
Scott, you know those policies better than I do. For me, as a full-time employee, I have and a department coordinator. It's a little different when I'm working with my students. What's the policy on that, Scott?
Yeah, the deal is there isn't a policy, so we never specify when you do it. The only thing we say is if you're scheduled to do 1 hour a week, that you do that 1 hour, but we never say when it is. I've had people do it on weekends. I've had people do it late at night, early in the morning. So it's totally up to you. I think the strategy would just be try to figure out with a poll or something when is the best time for most of the students. And it's your best guess in some cases because not every student will even respond to a poll. But you kind of have to figure that out. But it is interesting what Amber was saying about the late night stuff because we're trying to meet our student schedules. So that's up to you. You have total freedom. Of course, think about self-care. I mean, if you don't want to be up at 3 in the morning and that's the best time for your students, it doesn't mean you should do office hours at 3 in the morning because that may not be good for your sleep patterns and so forth. Right. So it's totally your call. I think it's just we try to do them when they are the most convenient. I remember teaching the Promise class last year, and one of the things in there was about office hours, and I shared with the students this article that said nationwide, most students, a big number of students, do not take advantage of office hours. And so part of it is trying to drill into the students, hey, this is when you get one-on-one help. If you're trying to learn how to create some cool graphic design in Photoshop or whatever for your digital media class, and you're not getting that in the discussions or the videos or the modules, meet with Solange one-on-one and get some of that assistance. And so hopefully students take advantage of that because that's really what office hours are for. But as I said earlier, there's a real tradition where students, not just LTCC, but nationwide, where students don't attend office hours. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, because I've had now 3 office hours, and I have yet to have a student sign on.
And I always when I put my office hours, I put and by appointment so that students understand that that's not the only time that I'm available.
Yeah.
They can reach out and, if we can work it out with our schedules, then I'll take the time to chat with them. And that allows them some of that flexibility.
I didn't know that I could do that. That's what I'm asking is, do I have that option?
Yeah, you can do that. As long as you make if it's 1 hour a week and you do that, the contract says you're being paid for that, that's fine. There isn't anything. The only thing informally that used to happen, more so with full-time faculty because we do 5 hours of office hours per week, is the administration sometimes wanted us to block our schedules. So if you taught, a 10-12 class, and you had, an hour and a half break for lunch, and then you had an afternoon class, maybe try to put in between those classes an office hour, just to make it convenient for the students. But with Zoom, really what Amber was getting at earlier, if it works late at night or early in the morning or even on a weekend, I would say try that. And as Amber was saying as well, do the to be announced or by appointment, if you want to try to make a different time. If Tuesday at 11 or whatever it is doesn't work, reach out to the students to see if they're scheduled. Because you have 30 I want to say like 30 some students. So you would think that would work for a few of those students, but it's hard to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I have 30 students, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So it's totally up to you. I would just say try to make it convenient and maybe have it as an appointment option if students can't make it. You just want to, again, really think about your time. You wouldn't, if you're being paid for an hour, you wouldn't necessarily want to then maybe have a second hour that's to be announced. You could always say, I'm just going to do to be announced, but I think, based on the contract, you would have to just make sure that, you log on and you get that time in for that hour per week if you're doing an hour. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a problem. I don't mind
Yeah.
being online sitting there by myself.
yeah, yeah. And it's not you. Again, it's a real issue nationwide with office hours where, I've talked to so many faculty over the last 20 some years teaching here, and it's a pretty common experience where you could have a whole week go by and not a single student shows up. You often will get students close to the project due dates, close to an exam, a quiz, and that's typically when office hours would always pick up for me when we were teaching in person, where the week before the test, everyone would flood into my office and ask for help, or if a paper was due or something like that. So sometimes it happens close to due dates. You actually could find that happening in the virtual office hours as well.
Do you allow as many students as want in your office hours, or do you only take one at a time?
So I haven't had, so far I haven't had any takers, but my preference for office hours would be if I had one-on-one time, because students may have different concerns. And in some cases, like if a student has a problem with another student in the class, if one of those students is saying inappropriate things in the discussion board or in the actual in-person face-to-face class, you would want that privacy just to meet with the students separately. If it was more a tutorial, if you said, hey, anyone who wants to log on, I'm showing you how to do layers in Photoshop on Thursday or something, you could do it more as a tutorial. And then anyone who shows up, if you focus on that topic or theme, they would attend based on wanting to get help. So I feel like in that scenario, it would be more acceptable. I think it's just what Amber was talking about earlier with FERPA issues or privacy. If a student wants to talk to you about an issue with another student, or they have a real concern, they're not performing well. I had a student recently, she dropped a class, unfortunately, but she was really struggling with her discussion posts and she was getting kind of upset. And I said, hey, I want to help you with this. Let me give you a model of a good discussion post, and then please send me a sample before it's due, and then we can work on that, because I want you to be successful, because I think you're just not writing these posts in a way that they're making a lot of sense just grammatically. But she ended up dropping the class, and that happens, and you try not to take it personally, because again, just because students don't attend or if they drop your class, we get a lot of, in any distance ed class, you'll see it could be even a third of the class drops out before the class is over at the end of the quarter. So so I would say, office hours, if you meet privately one-on-one with a student, if it's a more personal issue, but if it's a tutorial, then you could feel free, I think, to meet with a group of students at once. As long as, yeah.
Would it be appropriate for me to say these office hours are for tutorials, and if you have any personal issues, please make an appointment?
Yeah, that's great. Yep. Yeah, to keep it safe, a safe space, because you just don't want to discuss, one student's grades with another student. But
right.
Yeah, you could say that. If it's going to be something personal and you don't feel comfortable discussing it in a group, please set up an appointment and we can meet privately.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'll do that.
Yeah.
The other thing I've
go ahead.
been seeing in a lot of my the equity webinars and talking about analyzing your syllabus and making sure things are clear for all students is with office hours, making sure that there's an explanation of what they are.
Totally.
And saying office hours are for questions about assignments, tutorials, questions about grades, student conflict, mental and emotional support, support navigating the college system in general, whatever you're comfortable with counseling and supporting on, so that students understand that you're somebody that they can come to. because a first time, first generation college student may not understand what office hours are. Oh, your office is open. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have dual enrollment with the high school.
Oh.
I have about 3 high school students in my class.
Okay.
Which is pretty
Okay.
cool. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Very cool to get their perspective. Yeah. So I just want that opportunity to be able to have one-on-one and my office hours be as many as want to join us. But I did not ask about a time factor, take a poll and do a time factor. I think I'll be doing that as well.
It might be a good idea. Again, even if students say they can meet on a particular day and time, it doesn't mean some students, and Amber's point is great, explain what office hours are, because we often don't. I'm guilty of not doing that, explaining what their purposes are. But even if you do that and you offer it at the best time for most of the students, again, try not to take it personally, because I just think sometimes some students are intimidated. Hopefully they attend, but it's a real big issue in teaching, just not having students seeing the office hour as a great opportunity. Now, I suspect the one exception is probably in math classes, maybe English classes, because those often have the tendency of being seen as super challenging just because of some of the skills required. So that could be the case. I don't know, like with culinary arts or some of the career and technical ed classes, but I'd be curious to see if certain disciplines have better attendance in office hours because of perceptions about the challenge of the class, the material, and so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. So far, I've got really straight. I did not create this class, and I think the class has been brilliantly created, and the discussions are very positive and student-oriented discussions, and so everybody's doing really, really well. So I'm very happy with how the class is going.
That's really good. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. She did a great job.
It's great to hear.
Yeah. So I just don't know enough about student interaction. I am a classroom instructor. I am not a Zoom instructor. I really prefer to be in the classroom. So for me to not have a Zoom class is very odd for me, not to have, one-on-one with the students, or a screen full of faces,
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it's very different for me to not have any interaction with my students except by reply, and I prefer to I would like it if my students would attend office hours, and I think now that I have learned a couple of tricks to promote office hours, I think I'm going to apply those tricks.
Yeah, great ideas. You could even think of some people might give bonus points or something like that if they work on a paper or something or an assignment and they don't get full credit. You could give bonus points if they come to the office hours and discuss the work with you as a way of incentivizing it a little bit, perhaps. Because Amber, I think, are they required to meet with you? Isn't there some requirement? Or
they have to meet with me for an orientation. And they have to meet with their instructor 3 times throughout the quarter, at a minimum.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a lot of that face-to-face class time.
Yeah.
We don't have that scheduled like Tuesday, Thursday, normal synchronous classes, even when we are on campus. And so they are required before they ever even enroll in the course. They have to meet with me, and we talk through what the course is, review the syllabus, talk about what the requirements are, that kind of thing. Because of the nature of the course, and I need to make sure they're in a job where it's safe and healthy, and that it's they have a business license, and that they're receiving a paycheck, and that all of that we're not promoting pay under the table or unpaid labor or things like that. So work-based learning has some restrictions as to where the students can work. And so we go through and we approve it before they ever enroll.
What department are you with, Amber?
So it's the apprenticeship and work-based learning department. So it's internships, apprenticeships, and then work experience courses.
Wow.
So yeah, we're in kind of a different world, and things are changing for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
But Solange, I was thinking this might be a neat time for you to do a video to your students. I can see that you're passionate about wanting to get to know them and wanting to see their faces. I can see it right now on your face as you think about it. So it might be a great time to film a quick 1-minute video of, hey, just wanted to let you know I posted a poll because I haven't seen anybody in office hours and I really want to get to know you better. And so when are you available? And share a little of your personality and the smile I see on your face right now, because even through the screen, I can see your passion for your students right now.
Well,
and they'll be able to see it too. And so it might be a really good time to make one of those more personal connections.
I think that thank you for that. I really am very flattered. I created, this class had 0 videos in it. So at the beginning of the quarter, I created 12 1-minute videos, one for each week. And they're actually kind of funny. They're silly because well, this week, this is week 2. And this week we're going to da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, so I do have a personal touch inside the class. Creating announcements, a video announcement might be a good idea. Saying, I would appreciate being able to meet you. Now, having a office hours being required, is that an option?
I don't think we can require office hours. Now, if you had something that was a class project and you said, you have to meet with me, the instructor, to go over your project for 30 minutes or 15 minutes or something, that could be a requirement. I've never heard of office hours, though, as a requirement. It typically wouldn't be, just because we would say the required time is the time spent in the class, and also then the Carnegie unit, the amount of time spent out of class, reading their homework and doing the homework and all that kind of stuff. So probably not a required thing that I've heard of. Yeah.
No, but I like your idea of it being a required part of a report or a project.
Yeah.
That you need to either, that at some point you either need to discuss the topic, or you need to do a review after the project is submitted and review their grade, or do something like that, so that you are getting a little bit of that one-on-one connection. Or even asking the students to submit a video that introduces themselves at the beginning of the quarter, or tells a little about themselves, or asks them to share a story of, a time when XYZ, a time when they enjoyed nature. Or I've been working with my nieces in their elementary school classes, and my niece had to do a flip grid on a time that she showed courage. And so she had to record a video and send it to her teacher of a time when she was courageous. And it's part of their social emotional learning unit, which I think is great. And they've been doing a good job. Her teacher's done a good job of trying to get connected with them. But, some of those, so at least you could see them, even if you're not having a direct conversation, and get to know them like you would in passing in a classroom.
Yeah,
might help build some of those relationships and give you and them some connection.
I know Flipgrid. That's funny that they use it. For how old is your niece?
That is my 10-year-old niece.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I have an introduction, week 1, where all the students introduce themselves and to refer to all the other students. And I promote, replying to other students. But I would really like some Zoom time with my students. I'm very frustrated that I have not met any of them yet. And even though we have that introduction, and I took notes, and I have, a whole sheet of who's who and what they love and where they're from and what they do. But that's not the same as seeing them on the Zoom. And so, since this is my first asynchronous class, I'm learning what my options are and how to take advantage of office hours. So So
Yeah, you could even because you could certainly bring in. We've been saying a synchronous Zoom, even in a so-called Eve class. We're saying to go back to grace and empathy that if a student misses that because of work or home issues or parenting, we try to maybe allow a makeup. But one of the things you could do is say, well, we have this discussion board due this week. To receive credit, you could either post on a discussion board or you could log on with me during such and such time for a Zoom and we'll discuss the same topic, but we'll do it more synchronously over video. And that way you give some students an option if they would prefer. Because, I think a lot of, I was telling someone yesterday, we don't have the luxury anymore of just walking down the hall and saying hi to someone at work. So for a lot of our students and ourselves, I think some of these meetings over Zoom, there's Zoom fatigue certainly, but also I think some students might want more opportunities to have live synchronous sessions, to have some discussion. So you could set up some kind of structure there to allow for an option to meet live for some of the students if they want to do that. There's nothing against that, that says you can't do that.
right, but that's on my own time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, there's a lot on. I was talking with, I think it was Eric the last couple of weeks that he's been logging in. He's like, I spent 12 hours in this and 12 hours in this. There's a lot of that quote, it's on my time, I think, in all of our jobs. So, yeah, it is on your own time. So you have to balance that to go back to self care and mental health with your own schedule and just being able to I struggle with it sometimes, having to tell people no, if something's coming up and my bandwidth is limited, then I really need to do a better job of saying, hey, by the way, I can't do that this week in addition to the other stuff because I just have so much on my plate. So
Right,
so that's always the
right.
case.
I'm learning what the boundaries are and the, um, the protocol is
Mm-hmm.
on asynchronous classes. I mean still pretty new at this game, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning what I can do and how far I can take it, and
Yeah.
that's what I think today is the biggest advantage, is to learn that I can actually do more than just one office hour a week. I am
Yeah.
actually grateful to learn that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That I'm
I
not going to get
mean,
in trouble if I make
no.
appointments with my students.
No, I mean, you could do 40 hours of office hours a week. Now, again, would I recommend that? Maybe not, but if you wanted to, you could. I mean, I've seen math instructors tutor way beyond, their office hour time because they're so passionate about helping students figure out math. So, yeah, that's always an
Okay.
option for you.
Oh, good. This
Mm-hmm.
is what a relief.
Yeah.
This is such a relief to know
Yeah.
this. I'm
Yeah.
very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, I don't know.
Yes.
I was just saying, any other tips on trying to, um, do you think it's important, like, to get out of the house more? I mean, I think a lot of us we're spending time inside our homes, apartments, and maybe we need to make that time. Although, there's been smoke lately in this whole region, so it's been a little hard to get outside and enjoy it because of the smoke. That was one of the things on the list we didn't include with the political stuff and COVID,
Yeah.
all the fires,
Yeah.
because it's just made. There was one city in the Bay Area this last week. Someone told me it was 400 the level, which is hazardous.
It's in Napa. Yeah.
Napa, that area, yeah.
Yeah. I create 2 hours a day,
Hmm.
and unfortunately, I live right next to a trailhead.
Oh,
So
nice.
I pack up the dogs and I
Hmm.
go out for 2 hours every day.
Hmm.
That's my therapy. That's my time. That's my church. It's my, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
community.
two
Yeah,
hour, 2 hours every day.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I wish I had that long. I'm trying to take more snippets.
Hmm.
You know, there's a really neat little garden right next to my daughter's daycare.
Hmm.
And so yesterday when I picked her up, we went and walked around the garden for 15 minutes.
Hmm.
Taking the dogs for a walk, doing more than just going to the mailbox.
Right.
Hmm.
There
Yeah,
have
yeah,
definitely been days where the
yeah.
only time I've gone outside is to go to the mailbox.
Yep, me too.
And for me, I love being outside and I love the fresh air and taking advantage of the days when we have had good air quality, and spending chunks of time on weekends outside to kind of reconnect and regroup has been important.
Hmm.
How old is your daughter?
She will be 2 next month.
Oh, priceless.
She's, yeah.
Priceless.
Yeah, hence the 96 pack of crayons underneath my desk, because she doesn't really know what she's doing with them. And most of my time is telling her not to eat them.
Right.
But it keeps her busy. Her favorite thing right now is pom-poms. So we play with a lot of dollar store pom-poms. We're social distancing a lot and not going out. We're going to the grocery store, maybe once a week, that kind of thing still. But I'm making kind of monthly trips to the dollar store for gadgets and doodads to keep her entertained. And I think that's.
Do you go to Carson City for the dollar store? Where's the
No,
dollar
there's
store?
one in Round Hill.
Oh, cool. I did not know that.
It's small. They don't have the selection that they do down in Carson City. I love the Carson City dollar store.
Got it.
And I really miss the dollar section at Target, but I haven't been to Target since like February.
Well, they redid the whole, it's super cool and hip inside now.
Is it?
Yeah, they redid
now I really want to go.
Yeah.
We did go to Costco once because we're at the lake, and so we're trying to travel as little as possible. We went to Costco once because they had a car seat on sale. Mm-hmm. And so we went and my daughter needed a new car seat. We needed one for the second car. And so it was $100 off. And at that kind of savings, we were like, okay, we'll go. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was worth
and my daughter and I played at the park across the street while my husband went into Costco and ran the errand and that kind of stuff. But I think it's important to find some things where you have a sense of normalcy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With it being fall. We didn't know what we were going to do about the pumpkin patch.
Yeah.
I don't want to be out there with hundreds of people. No. But we found a little farm up in Sparks that was doing private tours.
Oh, cool.
And so Tuesdays from 10 to 5, they're doing tours of small groups up to 10. You book the whole group. It's all your family group or your pod. Andelin Farms up there was great. We got to do the petting zoo. We got to hold baby chicks. We got rabbits. We got a hayride, and we didn't have to have that public interaction that we're not comfortable with yet.
I'm not either. I hear you.
Yeah. And so kind of finding some of those things. And even though, we're lucky that we could afford to do that. And that we have family in town that wanted to do it with us and that kind of thing. But it's fall. So are you baking apple pies, or are you decorating pumpkins, or are you still going to do Halloween costumes and just do something fun and find an alternative there?
Greeting's probably out, right? I mean,
it is for us.
Yeah.
We're not going door to door touching candy that, we don't know who else has touched.
No.
I mean, we're also lucky that my daughter won't even be 2 yet, and she's not going to know the difference.
Right.
Her older cousins do, and will. And that's one of the reasons we did the farm with one set of cousins.
The 10-year-old. Yeah.
It was the 7-year-old. Yeah, my 7-year-old niece.
Even the 7-year-old. But these kids, his 7 and 10-year-olds, are going to be impacted by Halloween this year.
Yeah, they are.
Because they know.
Yep. They know the difference. So,
yes.
For us, whether it's getting outside for a walk, we live right by a river, or going down and putting our toes in the water, making sure that we're making time for Zoom calls with family and friends across the country. Right. That normally you'd have a phone call with or that kind of thing, but seeing faces, has been big.
I think these Zoom meetings, especially across country, are now going to be the norm. I don't think it's going to go away when COVID is done. I think we're going to continue that habit, that lifestyle of Zoom. I think it's going to continue as what we've been forced to learn will become normal.
Yeah. And it could help with, carbon. I always say that, like, it's definitely, I think about people going to conferences where everyone's flying and you stay in hotels, and obviously this will hurt the travel industry, but being able to do this more virtually, it's maybe not as fun, but I did this Guided Pathways conference last week, and I thought it was great. We did breakouts and the speakers were engaging, and I was thinking, this is actually really good. So I think if you just put enough time into it and really think it through about what you want to accomplish with a Zoom session, then it can be really good, and it can just save on having to travel and spend all the time flying across the country, and
Right.
and it's so expensive to stay. A lot of conferences in big cities, I mean, you can't meet your budget with a hotel because you could spend $250 a night in a
Right.
hotel. So, yeah.
There are a lot of webinars and trainings that I wouldn't have been able to do if they were out of the area
Yeah.
that I can now do online or participate in part of it.
Yeah.
Where there's one workshop that's really interesting or something that I really want to do, but maybe not the whole 4-day conference. It's really been helpful.
It's really good.
Right. And the classes that are being offered that you normally wouldn't get, you know, there's a lot of classes that you can take that are being offered through the college that are like, you know, seminars and webinars that are really terrific that normally you wouldn't be able to do
Yeah.
in person. Yeah. So I agree. I think it's brilliant that we've got this new way of meeting and presenting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, we filled up our page. It's pretty good. You know, I mean, a lot of great ideas here, and obviously these vary if we're talking about our work colleagues versus our students, but definitely self-care and mental health, I think, is a big deal. And, you know, getting outside, maintaining a sense of normalcy as best as you can in these times, I think is just really key. So, yeah. So.
Yeah, that communication and that social emotional learning for our kids and our students, and even just friends and family, and just being open and owning your feelings. And you know, there's no wrong way to feel in this craziness.
Right.
And you know, just trying not to be judgmental and just be open and listen to each other and reach out to the people you care about.
Yeah, totally.
This next month is going to be insane.
I know.
It's going to be a nightmare. The rest of this year, I mean, it just it's not getting any better. Things keep getting worse and worse and worse. And just when you think things can turn around.
I know. It gets worse.
Yep.
Yeah, it just keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm snoozing a lot of my media, a lot of things that I need to be aware of, but I may not need the barrage of article headlines. Or Twitter storms or whatever, being aware of that. I've started to, rather than watching TV at night, I'm listening to books on tape.
There you go.
You know, my eyes are so tired.
Oh, I
and
know.
I was getting headaches. You
Yeah.
know, like Zoom fatigue.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing books on tape and podcasts instead of, you know, binging Netflix.
That's a great,
Yeah, when I do my 2-hour hike, I listen to, you know, podcasts. So same idea.
Great idea. That's really good.
I'm very grateful to both of you for giving me these new ideas for office hours. I am very grateful that you guys gave me this incredible feedback. I'm now very inspired by adding this extra step into my class. Thank you.
Definitely, yeah, of course.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Happy to help.
Yeah.
Happy to help.
Excellent.
It's nice to be able to share ideas and hear what other people are doing, and hear people traveling and doing things and getting out.
I'm in Los Angeles right now because my doctors are down here, and I have a roommate situation. So I'm in Los Angeles right now, and I can't wait to get out of here. It's so toxic down here.
Oh, geez.
It's so populated, and it's just, you know, when you're in Lake Tahoe and you can isolate and still have the beauty of God's country, and then you come to Los Angeles and you're bombarded with all of these issues and these people, and it's a nightmare. I can't wait to get out of here.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world.
Yeah.
But I'm allowed to be here because my class is asynchronous.
Right.
Even if it was synchronous, I could
you could still do it. Anywhere you could Zoom from, you could teach from.
Yeah. So that to me is amazing.
I know.
I would never be able to do this if I had classes.
No, I know.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So
Great.
there are advantages and disadvantages. I'd still rather be in the classroom.
Yeah.
So,
Cool. Well, this was great. Thank you both for attending. Think a lot of great ideas. I'll be sure to share these out. And again, Thursday we'll talk about synchronous versus asynchronous, so we can get into a little more of what advantages and disadvantages of each are. So
Great. Thanks
excellent.
for hosting, Scott.
Yeah,
Great
no, this was great.
As always. Good
Yeah.
discussion.
Thank you both for
Good
coming.
to see
So
you, Solange.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Amber.
Self-care,
Thanks
take
for
some
your
time.
feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Dr. Scott.
Yeah.